Oscar-Claude Monet was a founder of French Impressionist painting, and the most consistent and prolific practitioner of the movement's philosophy of expressing one's perceptions before nature, especially as applied to plein-air landscape painting. The term Impressionism is derived from the title of his painting Impression, Soleil Levant, which was exhibited in 1874 in the first of the independent exhibitions mounted by Monet and his associates as an alternative to the Salon de Paris. Monet's ambition of documenting the French countryside led him to adopt a method of painting the same scene many times in order to capture the changing of light and the passing of the seasons. From 1883 Monet lived in Giverny, where he purchased a house and property, and began a vast landscaping project which included lily ponds that would become the subjects of his best-known works. In 1899 he began painting the water lilies, first in vertical views with a Japanese bridge as a central feature, and later in the series of large-scale paintings that was to occupy him continuously for the next 20 years of his life. Monet and Impressionism. First Impressionist exhibition. From the late 1860s, Monet and other like-minded artists met with rejection from the conservative Accord de Copyright des Beaux-Arts which held its annual exhibition at the Salon de Paris. During the latter part of 1873, Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Camille Pissarro, and Alfred Sisley organized the Société Copyright Anonyme des Artistes Painters, Sculptors et Graveurs to exhibit their artworks independently. At their first exhibition, held in April 1874, Monet exhibited the work that was to give the group its lasting name. Impression, Sunrise was painted in 1872, depicting a Le Havre port landscape. From the painting's title the art critic Louis Leroy, in his review, L'Exposition des Impressionists, which appeared in Le Charivari, coined the term Impressionism. It was intended as disparagement but the Impressionists appropriated the term for themselves. Biography, Birth and Childhood. Claude Monet was born on 14 November 1840 on the 5th floor of 45 Rue Lafitte, in the 9th arrondissement of Paris. He was the second son of Claude Adolphe Monet and Louise Justine Aubre copyrightee Monet, both of them second-generation Parisians. On 20 May 1841, he was baptized in the local parish church, Notre-Dame de Lorette, as Oscar-Claude, but his parents called him simply Oscar. Despite being baptized Catholic, Monet later became an atheist. In 1845, his family moved to Le Havre in Normandy. His father wanted him to go into the family grocery business, but Monet wanted to become an artist. His mother was a singer. On 1 April 1851, Monet entered Le Havre Secondary School of the Arts. Locals knew him well for his charcoal caricatures, which he would sell for 10 to 20 francs. Monet also undertook his first drawing lessons from Jacques Frenet Section 1 Oshard, a former student of Jacques-Louis David. On the beaches of Normandy around 1856 he met fellow artist Eugène Boudin, who became his mentor and taught him to use oil paints. Boudin taught Monet en plein-air techniques for painting. Both received the influence of Johann Barthold Jonkind. On 28 January 1857, his mother died. At the age of 16, he left school and went to live with his widowed, childless aunt, Marie-Jeanne Lecadre. Paris. When Monet traveled to Paris to visit the Louvre, he witnessed painters copying from the old masters. Having brought his paints and other tools with him, he would instead go and sit by a window and paint what he saw. Monet was in Paris for several years and met other young painters, including Émile de Manet and others who would become friends and fellow Impressionists. In June 1861, Monet joined the 1st Regiment of African Light Cavalry in Algeria for a 7-year commitment, but, 2 years later, after he had contracted typhoid fever, his aunt intervened to get him out of the army if he agreed to complete an art course at an art school. It is possible that the Dutch painter Johann Barthold Jonkind, whom Monet knew, may have prompted his aunt on this matter. Disillusioned with the traditional art taught at art schools, in 1862 Monet became a student of Charles Gleyre in Paris, where he met Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Fra Copyright Dow Copyright Rick Bazille and Alfred Sisley. Together they shared new approaches to art, painting the effects of light en plein air with broken color and rapid brushstrokes, in what later came to be known as Impressionism. In January 1865 Monet was working on a version of Ladau's copyright Journée sur le Bain, aiming to present it for hanging at the Salon, which had rejected Manet's Ladau's copyright Journée sur le Bain 2 years earlier. Monet's painting was very large and could not be completed in time. Monet submitted instead a painting of Camille or the Woman in the Green Dress, one of many works using his future wife, Camille Duncer, as his model. This painting and a small landscape were both hung. The following year Monet used Camille for his model in Women in the Garden, and on the bank of the Seine, Benoît in 1868. Camille became pregnant and gave birth to their first child, Jean, in 1867. Monet and Camille married on June 28, 1870, just before the outbreak of the Franco-Prussian War, and, after their excursion to London and Zaandam, they moved to Argenteuil, in December 1871. During this time Monet painted various works of modern life. He and Camille lived in poverty for most of this period. Following the successful exhibition of some maritime paintings, and the winning of a silver medal at Le Havre, Monet's paintings were seized by creditors, from whom they were bought back by a shipping merchant, Gaudibert, who was also a patron of Baudin. Franco-Prussian War and Argenteuil. After the outbreak of the Franco-Prussian War, Monet and his family took refuge in England in September 1870, where he studied the works of John Constable and Joseph Mallord William Turner, both of whose landscapes would serve to inspire Monet's innovations in the study of colour. In the spring of 1871, Monet's works were refused authorization for inclusion in the Royal Academy exhibition. In May 1871, he left London to live in Zaandam, in the Netherlands, where he made 25 paintings. He also paid a first visit to nearby Amsterdam. In October or November 1871, he returned to France. From December 1871 to 1878 he lived at Argenteuil, a village on the right bank of the Seine River near Paris, and a popular Sunday outing destination for Parisians, where he painted some of his best-known works. In 1873, Monet purchased a small boat equipped to be used as a floating studio. From the boat studio Monet painted landscapes and also portraits of a Permilde Manet and his wife. Manet in turn depicted Monet painting aboard the boat, accompanied by Camille, in 1874. In 1874, he briefly returned to Holland. Impressionism. The first Impressionist exhibition was held in 1874 at 35 Boulevard des Capucines, Paris, from April 15 to May 15. The primary purpose of the participants was not so much to promote a new style, but to free themselves from the constraints of the Salon de Paris. The exhibition, open to anyone prepared to pay 60 francs, gave artists the opportunity to show their work without the interference of a jury. Renoir chaired the hanging committee and did most of the work himself, as others members failed to present themselves. In addition to Impression, Sunrise Monet presented 4 oil paintings and 7 pastels. Among the paintings he displayed was The Luncheon, which features Camille Duncer and Jean Monet, and which had been rejected by the Paris Salon of 1870. Also in this exhibition was a painting titled Boulevard des Capucines, a painting of the boulevard done from the photographer Nadar's apartment at number 35. Monet painted this subject twice and it is uncertain which of the 2 pictures, that now in the Pushkin Museum in Moscow, or that in the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City was the painting that appeared in the groundbreaking 1874 exhibition, though more recently the Moscow picture has been favored. Altogether, 165 works were exhibited in the exhibition, including 4 oils, 2 pastels and 3 watercolors by Morisot. 6 oils and 1 pastel by Renoir. 10 works by Degas. 5 by Pissarro. 3 by Carr copyright Zan. And 3 by Guillaumin. Several works were on loan, including Carr copyright Zan's Modern Olympia, Morisot's Hide and Seek and 2 landscapes by Sisley that had been purchased by Durand Ruel. The total attendance is estimated at 3,500 and some works did sell, though some exhibitors have placed their prices too high. Pissarro was asking 1,000 francs for the Orchard and Monet the same for Impression, Sunrise, neither of which sold. Renoir failed to obtain the 500 francs he was asking for La Loge, but later sold it for 450 francs to Paul Martin, dealer and supporter of the group. Paintings 1858 to Euro 1872. Death of Camille. In 1876, Camille Monet became ill with tuberculosis. Their second son, Michel, was born on 17 March 1878. This second child weakened her already fading health. In the summer of that year, the family moved to the village of Var-Copyright-Dale, where they shared a house with the family of Ernest Oscar de Copyright, a wealthy department store owner and patron of the arts. In 1878, Camille Monet was diagnosed with uterine cancer, and she died on September 5, 1879 at the age of 32. Monet made a study in oils of his dead wife. Many years later, Monet confessed to his friend Georges Clemenceau that his need to analyze colors was both the joy and torment of his life. He explained, "I one day found myself looking at my beloved wife's dead face and just systematically noting the colors according to an automatic reflex." John Berger describes the work as a blizzard of white, gray, purplish painter. A terrible blizzard of loss which will forever efface her features. In fact, there can be very few deathbed paintings which have been so intensely felt or subjectively expressive. Var-Copyright-Dale. After several difficult months following the death of Camille, Monet began to create some of his best paintings of the 19th century. During the early 1880s, Monet painted several groups of landscapes and seascapes in what he considered to be campaigns to document the French countryside. These began to evolve into series of pictures in which he documented the same scene many times in order to capture the changing of light and the passing of the seasons. Monet's friend Ernest Oscar de Copyright became bankrupt, and left in 1878 for Belgium. After the death of Camille Monet in September 1879, and while Monet continued to live in the house in Var-Copyright-Dale, Alice Oscar de Copyright helped Monet to raise his two sons, Jean and Michel. She took them to Paris to live alongside her own 6 children, Blanche Germaine, Suzanne, Marthe, Jean-Pierre, and Jacques. In the spring of 1880, Alice Oscar de Copyright and all the children left Paris and rejoined Monet at Var-Copyright-Dale. In 1881, all of them moved to Poissy, which Monet hated. In April 1883, looking out the window of the little train between Vernon and Gasny, he discovered Giverny in Normandy. Monet, Alice Oscar de Copyright and the children moved to Vernon, then to the house in Giverny, where he planted a large garden and where he painted for much of the rest of his life. Following the death of her estranged husband, Monet married Alice Oscar de Copyright in 1892. Paintings 1873 Euro 1879. Giverny. Monet's house and garden. At the beginning of May 1883, Monet and his large family rented a house and 2 acres from a local landowner. The house was situated near the main road between the towns of Vernon and Gasny at Giverny. There was a barn that doubled as a painting studio, orchards and a small garden. The house was close enough to the local schools for the children to attend, and the surrounding landscape offered many suitable motifs for Monet's work. The family worked and built up the gardens, and Monet's fortunes began to change for the better as his dealer Paul Durand Rouel had increasing success in selling his paintings. By November 1890, Monet was prosperous enough to buy the house, the surrounding buildings and the land for his gardens. During the 1890s, Monet built a greenhouse and a second studio, a spacious building well lit with skylights. Monet wrote daily instructions to his gardener, precise designs and layouts for plantings, and invoices for his floral purchases and his collection of botany books. As Monet's wealth grew, his garden evolved. He remained its architect, even after he hired 7 gardeners. Monet purchased additional land with a water meadow. In 1893 he began a vast landscaping project which included lily ponds that would become the subjects of his best-known works. White water lilies local to France were planted along with imported cultivars from South America and Egypt, resulting in a range of colors including yellow, blue and white lilies that turn pink with age. In 1899 he began painting the water lilies, first in vertical views with a Japanese bridge as a central feature, and later on the series of large-scale paintings that was to occupy him continuously for the next 20 years of his life. This scenery, with its alternating light and mirror-like reflections, became an integral part of his work. By the mid-1910s Monet had achieved a completely new, fluid, and somewhat audacious style of painting in which the water lily pond became the point of departure for an almost abstract art. Monet's garden. Last year's failing sight, Monet's second wife, Alice, died in 1911 and his oldest son Jean, who had married Alice's daughter Blanche, Monet's particular favorite, died in 1914. After Alice died, Blanche looked after and cared for Monet. It was during this time that Monet began to develop the first signs of cataracts. During World War I, in which his younger son Michel served and his friend and admirer Clemenceau led the French nation, Monet painted a series of weeping willow trees as homage to the French fallen soldiers. In 1923, he underwent 2 operations to remove his cataracts. The paintings done while the cataracts affected his vision have a general reddish tone, which is characteristic of the vision of cataract victims. It may also be that after surgery he was able to see certain ultraviolet wavelengths of light that are normally excluded by the lens of the eye. This may have had an effect on the colors he perceived. After his operations he even repainted some of these paintings, with bluer water lilies than before. Death. Monet died of lung cancer on December 5, 1926 at the age of 86 and is buried in the Giverny church cemetery. Monet had insisted that the occasion be simple. Thus only about 50 people attended the ceremony. His home, garden, and water lily pond were bequeathed by his son Michel, his only heir, to the French Academy of Fine Arts in 1966. Through the Fondation Claude Monet, the house and gardens were opened for visits in 1980, following restoration. In addition to souvenirs of Monet and other objects of his life, the house contains his collection of Japanese woodcut prints. The house and garden, along with the Museum of Impressionism Giverny, are major attractions in Giverny, which hosts tourists from all over the world. Monet's late paintings. Monet's methods. Monet has been described as the driving force behind Impressionism. Crucial to the art of the Impressionist painters was the understanding of the effects of light on the local color of objects, and the effects of the juxtaposition of colors with each other. Monet's long career as a painter was spent in the pursuit of this aim. In 1856, his chance meeting with Eugene Boudin, a painter of small beach scenes, opened his eyes to the possibility of plein-air painting. From that time, with a short interruption for military service, he dedicated himself to searching for new and improved methods of painterly expression. To this end, as a young man, he visited the Paris Salon and familiarized himself with the works of older painters, and made friends with other young artists. The 5 years that he spent at Argenteuil, spending much time on the River Seine in a little floating studio, were formative in his study of the effects of light and reflections. He began to think in terms of colors and shapes rather than scenes and objects. He used bright colors in dabs and dashes and squiggles of paint. Having rejected the academic teachings of Glaire's studio, he freed himself from theory, saying "I like to paint as a bird sings." In 1877 a series of paintings at Street Laser station had Monet looking at smoke and steam and the way that they affected color and visibility, being sometimes opaque and sometimes translucent. He was to further use this study in the painting of the effects of mist and rain on the landscape. The study of the effects of atmosphere were to evolve into a number of series of paintings in which Monet repeatedly painted the same subject in different lights, at different hours of the day, and through the changes of weather and season. This process began in the 1880s and continued until the end of his life in 1926. His first series exhibited as such was of haystacks, painted from different points of view and at different times of the day. 15 of the paintings were exhibited at the Galerie Durand Ruel in 1891. In 1892 he produced what is probably his best-known series, 26 Views of Rouen Cathedral. In these paintings Monet broke with painterly traditions by cropping the subject so that only a portion of the facade is seen on the canvas. The paintings do not focus on the grand medieval building, but on the play of light and shade across its surface, transforming the solid masonry. Other series include Poplars, Mornings on the Seine, and the water lilies that were painted on his property at Giverny. Between 1883 and 1908, Monet traveled to the Mediterranean, where he painted landmarks, landscapes, and seascapes, including a series of paintings in Venice. In London he painted 4 series: the Houses of Parliament, London, Charing Cross Bridge, Waterloo Bridge, and Views of Westminster Bridge. Helen Gardner writes, Monet, with a scientific precision, has given us an unparalleled and unexcelled record of the passing of time as seen in the movement of light over identical forms. Series of paintings. Fame, in 2004, London, The Parliament, Effects of Sun in the Fog, sold for $20.1 million. In 2006, the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society published a paper providing evidence that these were painted in situ at St Thomas Hospital over the River Thames. Velaz's Prowess de Deep has been stolen on 2 separate occasions, once in 1998 and most recently in August 2007. It was recovered in June 2008. Monet's Le Pont du Chemin de Fer Argenteuil, an 1873 painting of a railway bridge spanning the Seine near Paris, was bought by an anonymous telephone bidder for a record $41.4 million at Christie's auction in New York on May 6, 2008. The previous record for his painting stood at $36.5 million. Just a few weeks later, Le Bassin aux Nymphes copywriters sold at Christie's June 24, 2008 auction in London, Lot 19, for a £36,500,000 or a £40,921,250 with fees, nearly doubling the record for the artist and representing one of the top 20 highest prices paid for a painting at the time. In October 2013, Monet's paintings, L'Église de Vitel and Le Bassin aux Nymphes, became subjects of a legal case in New York against NY-based Vilma Bautista, one-time aide to Imelda Marcos, wife of dictator Ferdinand Marcos, after she sold Le Bassin aux Nymphes for $32 million to a Swiss buyer. The said Monet paintings, along with 2 others, were acquired by Imelda during her husband's presidency and allegedly bought using the nation's funds. Bautista's lawyer claimed that the aide sold the painting for Imelda but did not have a chance to give her the money. The Philippine government seeks the return of the painting. Le Bassin aux Nymphes, also known as Japanese footbridge over the water lily pond at Giverny, is part of Monet's famed Water Lilies series. Series of water lilies in different lights. See also, List of works by Claude Monet, History of Painting, Western Painting, References. Further reading. External links, Claude Monet at the Museum of Modern Art, Claude Monet by himself, intermonet.com, Claude Monet paintings, media and interactive timeline, mootnotes.com, Claude Monet, Life and Paintings, comparison of reproductions of Monet, KASRL.org, Monet at Giverny, photos of Monet's grave, The Unknown Monet Exhibition View sketchbooks, clarkart.edu. Union List of artist names, Getty Vocabularies. Claude Monet Works, works by or about Claude Monet in libraries, Claude Monet at the Guggenheim, Impressionism, a centenary exhibition, an exhibition catalogue from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which contains material on Monet.